everyone, Nubkeks here, and welcome to my tier list for the Lucio patch. Pretty much, I think the last big patch here of season 3. There might be another one at the very, like a big one with a hero at the end, but I don't think so. I'd say that's going to be the start of season 4. So yeah, here we go. This is going to be sort of the broad landscape for getting your final placement here in season 3. Let's do it. We're going to dive into warriors first of all, and as we do, actually, a couple of things to note at the start. This is mostly focused on higher level play. So do bear that in mind. Some heroes work better at lower level play than higher level play. I'll point out some of the main offenders or whatever you want to call it. Yeah, I think that's probably most of the stuff to point out. In terms of the tiers as well, actually, one final thing before we jump into the warriors too, because this does come up from time to time. Tier 2 is like heroes that are, you know, they're standard, they're solid, they're good. Tier 3 are the ones that are a little bit weaker in my opinion, that you probably don't want to be playing. Tier 1 are heroes that are very good, that will normally be contested and fought over. And then Tier S are incredibly powerful. I think they're normally like first pick, first ban material, that sort of thing. So yeah, let's go for this. Alright, so going into the warriors then. Tier S, I have ETC, Varian, this is a big change this month, and Zarya. So ETC, he's been a top warrior for the longest time. No big surprise there. Varian is like the big newcomer to the meta right now. A large part of this is due to kind of Korea showing how it's done in the HGC, and then that sort of influence coming across into the other regions. He did receive a couple of buffs and a few patches, like overpower at level 1, things like that. But yeah, tank Varian is insanely strong. Number 1, he's very tanky. He absorbs a lot of damage. He's very difficult to kill. And then number 2, he's got point and click CC. And that matters so much. I have a video up on him recently. In fact, I think there's 2 videos up on the channel of Tank Varian recently. So you can check those out if you want to see the gameplay in more detail. But, I mean, point and click CC, it is so reliable. There's no way for your opponent to outplay it or to counterplay it in terms of dodging or anything like that. It's, yeah, it's just massively strong. His ganking, the lockdown pick potential is just immense. So yeah, Varian is the new up-and-comer in Tier S. And then I still have Zarya here as well. I feel like she's fallen off a little bit, actually, with the nerfs that they gave her. She doesn't do as much damage as before. I still think she brings something very special to the mix, though, which is, you know, a good damage dealing and an extra shielding type hero. So if someone like Tastar is banned out and you need a shielding hero, Zarya is there and she's incredibly strong. She's quite dominant on maps like Infernal Shrines, Braxis Holdout, stuff like that. So yeah, Zarya still just about holding on to Tier S for now, but not as strong as Zarya has been recently. Right, let's go to Tier 1. Now Tier 1, these are the heroes I feel like are actually very strong right now, and that will kind of be contested and play a big part in some of these drafts. So no surprise, I think, for these first 2 here. Dehaka and Sonya, these are the new sort of bruisers, if you will. Dehaka can also somewhat main tank right now. But obviously they both bring, you know, a good strong solo lane potential. They do a lot of damage in team fights, and they're fairly tanky as well. You rarely want either hero as your solo frontline, but then again, at the moment, you kind of want 2 frontliners anyway, regardless, fairly tanky ones. But yeah, Dehaka and Sonya. Sonya is probably the big addition this time around. With the buffs they gave to her Whirlwind, she's really good right now. Again, I'm not sure if there is Sonya gameplay on the channel. I'll have to look into that for you guys. But I have played Sonya on stream a little bit. But yeah, she's incredibly strong, and you go for a bit of a tanky build now, built around kind of Whirlwind, stuff like that. I think she's actually really good. I think Leap as well. It's not really seen too much play, but I think there is a good place for Leap as well. I think she's a really strong hero. Diablo, Anubarak, Tyrael. Fairly standard stuff here as well. Diablo, he's super tanky. He's good on maps. I'd say, crucially with Diablo, you want to really be playing him on maps where there's a rotation between 2 lanes. Why is that? Well, often then there's good places for you to get stuns with your Q and get your combo off and get some picks and some kills. And then it's very important that you can actually farm your souls as well. So for example, I think Diablo's really strong on, let's say, Dragonshire. I think he's really strong on Tomb of Spider Queen. Maps kind of like that, where there's 2 lanes to move between and to soak them up. I think he falls off a lot on, let's say, Battlefield of Eternity. I think he's much weaker there because you're not soaking up souls all that often, and dying can be a huge problem then. If you lose your souls, it's very hard to get them back because you're not farming these minion waves. So I think he's a little bit weaker in that sort of sense. But yeah, he's still very, very strong on the maps he's strong on. Nubarak is obviously great as like a counter to spell damage. He brings great CC, and then again, spell damage, he's very tanky as well. And then Tyrael, just about at the bottom of tier 1 here, right here. He's not as strong as he used to be, despite having very few changes. It's just the value of Sanctification. Do you get value out of Sanctification? Oftentimes, yes, you can. He's obviously a decent solo laner in his own right, and yeah, he's a good hero overall. He doesn't fit the meta overly much right now because we don't have an abundance of like sort of high damage melee assassins and stuff like that. But when he does, I think he's still very, very strong. So I have him in tier 2. Sorry, excuse me, tier 1. Tier 2 then, we have Muradin, Artanis, this is a big change, guys, Rexxar, Arthas, and Chen. So, for me, kind of the fundamental thing for a lot of these heroes is how the meta has changed, right? How the meta has changed. So Muradin, he's still a good, solid tank. I think, generally speaking, you're not going to be going for him, though, as your main warrior. Above, you're definitely going to be prioritizing Varian or ETC more, for the most part. Muradin is a good, versatile backup tank, but he's rarely going to be your first port of call. I just feel like his CC isn't as reliable as like Varian or ETC, and that's the main thing you're looking for. But he's still really good. Artanis, right? This is the big change. I've really gone off Artanis a lot. I've gone off Artanis a lot for 2 main reasons. Number 1, the fairly straightforward reason is that, well, you know, he did receive a few nerfs. I think they hurt him a little bit. Number 2, and more importantly really, is how the meta has changed. When Artanis was his strongest after the rework, that was in the midst of the Bloodlust, Earthquake, Rainer craziness that was that particular patch. It was a very right-click, a very explosive, basic attack focused patch and meta. That's changed a lot. That has changed a lot, and my experience in Hero League has been that people have been very, very slow to take that on board with Artanis. And you still have Artanis picked into compositions and picking Suppression Pulse when there's nothing for Suppression Pulse to really accomplish. That's been something I've noticed happen tons in my own Hero League games. It's incredibly frustrating. But yeah, seriously, Artanis, to get value out of this hero, you need to be landing some good flips, some good swaps. You also need to be getting value out of your heroic, primarily Suppression Pulse. If the enemy team doesn't have a draft that Suppression Pulse is good against, which again is much rarer these days than it was when Artanis' rework first came in, the hero is going to be much less valuable. And then bear in mind, he's competing effectively for his spot against Dahaka and against Sonya. That's a pretty difficult thing to do. Those heroes bring so much. They do a lot more damage. I don't know. I just feel like, you really have to justify now taking Artanis over. Like, why am I picking Artanis instead of Dahaka? That's probably the big question, because Dahaka is still not banned all that much. Dahaka is often available. Why would I pick Artanis instead of Dahaka? Okay, I'd pick him if, a Suppression Pulse is going to be really, really good here. If we don't need a solo laner, if we don't need the global presence. 9 times out of 10, Dahaka is better. That's the real problem with Artanis. But people, I felt like people haven't really gotten used to this yet. They're still in, because he hasn't received any drastic nerfs, people haven't really stopped and gone, wait a second, let's consider how the meta has changed. Does Artanis still fit? He does a little bit. He's still a decent choice. He's tier 2, but he's not the tier S Artanis that was there in the rework. It's just that the game has changed, unfortunately. Then we got Rexxar, Arthas, and Chen. I think, again, these are all good, solid heroes that you can draft if you need to. The meta, again, has changed a little bit against these guys, so we don't have as many melee assassins for Arthas, but I think Arthas is still really good. I've got a personal love for Arthas. Rexxar is obviously a good, solo laner as well, if you need something that's sticky and tanky, and that will be hard to get out of the solo lane. Chen, also, he's a good laner. He's got good dive. And yeah, I think that these are heroes to keep an eye on, tier 2 heroes that, depending on how the meta changes and stuff, they could become much more valuable. But yeah, there you go. The Warriors, I should also say this, the Warriors are pretty well balanced. I think like all of these warriors, like tier S1 and 2, are all pretty viable. You're not gonna go horrifically wrong. You know, like if you grab Arthas early on in the draft, it's not like, oh well, oh damn it, like we're really far behind because we didn't get, you know, a tier 1 or tier S hero. It's still really, really solid. Tier 3, these ones are unfortunately, in my opinion, a little bit weaker. We have Johanna, Leoric, Stitches, and Cho. So the problem with Cho, really, this season, the definitive problem is that there's no duo queue, so there's no organization between Cho and Gall, and there can be rage, and he can be counterpicked, and yeah, Cho is just not really a thing in Hero League anymore. Stitches, likewise, I mean, you're going up against a lot of these tankier teams now. It's like, does the hook... the fundamental question with Stitches, he's fairly gimmicky. Is, does the hook get value? Generally speaking, no. And then also, why choose Stitches instead of Artanis? That's another tough question to ask as well. We've got Leoric. He's actually a good anti-warrior. He could be okay. I'd be more willing to see Leoric and Johanna over Stitches and Cho'Gall these days. Johanna, she brings good wave clear. She's actually pretty good on like Infernal Shrines. Not bad on Tomb of Spider Queen. She doesn't bring as much control. She doesn't bring as much pressure. Yeah, she just doesn't bring as much like teamfight control as other warriors do. But she brings nice wave clear, so there's that. And she is safe as well. But she is definitely not, you know, she's kind of like the one of the last warriors you turn to. She's very much like, do we need wave clear? Okay, if we really do, then Johanna's a great choice. Otherwise, a safer tank would be, you know, Muradin or the ETC or the Varian. They're the ones you'd be going for usually. Leoric can be good. He's a good solo laner too. So, you know, if you need a good solo laner, they've got like tanky ones. Got a good matchup for Leoric in the solo lane. He can be a decent one to grab. But he's not super impactful right now, in my opinion. So there you go, guys. That is the warrior tier list. Let's hop into supports next. Here we go, supports. And yeah, supports in a pretty interesting spot right now. We're actually having quite a bit of a change up in terms of supports. And of course, Lucio is here, and that could mix things up quite a lot. And I'm going to talk about how I will have a Lucio video up today, but I'll also talk about how Lucio might change the meta. So anyway, tier S, I think Malfurion is still tier S. I think he is, you know, the best overall support for the moment. You know, he brings, you know, pig potential with the roots and control with the roots. The Twilight Dream is massively impactful. He's got great healing. He's got the cooldown reduction of Mana Restore. He can reveal vision, Scouting Drone, Moonfire, all that stuff. He has a lot of tools in his kit. I think he's still the #1 support in the game right now. Tier 1 is where stuff gets interesting, guys. Here we go. So I've actually put Lucio up at the top of tier 1. Not 100% sure with Lucio or with Murky exactly where they'll lie. But Lucio seems, from the games I've played so far, from testing myself, he seems very, very strong. And I can only see that sort of increasing. Alright, Lucio. I'll talk more about Lucio in the video I do on him. But he is very easy to play to moderate standard. To push it up then to higher standards, it's where things get much more difficult and complex. Like, how deep can you go with the movements? Can you go behind the team and knock people back? Perfect timing on sound barrier. Perfect timing. You know, that's much more complicated. But to play him to a decent level, he's very simple. There's no stutter stepping. You've got a giant circle around you. Lucio's got an incredibly high win rate. I think a large part of that is because he's just damn easy. It's like you just run around after people, press your E button when, you know, there's like a fight or when people need to be healed, and you've got a big circle and you just move it around and keep them in it. It's kind of like playing Medic, except you're faster than Medic, basically. And you've got a big circle, so you know, like, very clearly the limits of her range, whereas with Medic, it's a little harder to see. But at least it's very easy to see. But, yeah, what does he do? So he brings decent healing. The big thing with him, and again, bear in mind, like, looking at the other support, like, Kerosene with Iron Fists is, like, a really top tier support. Rhaegar is a really top tier support. Malf with Twilight Dream is a top tier support. You know, supports aren't as much anymore about just the raw healing they do. The utility they bring is becoming more and more important. That's very much the way Blizzard is pushing the game. And that Lucio brings utility in spades. You know, just the raw engage of the speed boost is incredibly impactful. And the synergy between speed boost, sound barrier, incredibly impactful. His other heroic is apparently really, really good as well. Yeah, I think Lucio is going to be very, very strong. The crucial thing about Lucio and how he might change up the meta is that he gives movement speed to allies. So think of all the heroes that thrive off of movement speed. You could have new melee assassins. new warriors coming into the meta a bit more when they're paired with a Lucio. Okay, you could have some other ranged assassins. Let's say, for example, in ranged assassins, let me think here. So you could have like Zul'jin with Lucio and with Tassadar. That's a pretty good threesome right there, right? Because you've got Tassadar shields plus the healing from the basic attacks, which will help top Zul'jin up and keep him going. And then Lucio providing move speed, because Zul'jin really suffers from a lack of move speed, and some peel with the knockback. You know, a shield with sound barrier if Zul'jin's gonna go down. That's a pretty impactful thing, and you know, shielding for Tassadar, letting him go in a bit more. Yeah, I mean, you just have to, as we move forwards, I think Lucio is going to really shake things up. I think he's going to be massively impactful on the pro scene, where that movement speed is going to be insanely strong. But yeah, I think he's good at lower levels of play because he's damn easy. He's good at higher levels of play because then you can really get more complicated and start exploiting the movement speed thing. Anyway, we also got Rehgar, we've got Karazim, we've got Tassadar. You know, the tier 1, the exact placements here on tier 1 are very, very interchangeable. They're very interchangeable. I've been really enjoying Karazim recently, going for like a supportive Q build with Divine Palm, and then Iron Fist. So you do some like good damage to force away targets that are, you know, coming in, or to bring a little bit of extra like focus attack. And like just kill pressure on that single target, help burn down your kill target a little bit quicker with Iron Fists, and do objectives and minion waves a bit quicker as well. And then have, you know, all your Qs around the place, giving loads of cleanses, loads of speed boosts, and then, you know, Divine Palm to keep people alive. Pretty damn cool. Got some gameplay up of him on the channel, I think, recently as well. Then we got Tassadar, of course. Tassadar the shielding, brings great wave clear, great damage with Archon. He's a really good hero. And then Rehgar is still, you know, a good healer as well. Ancestral, bear in mind as well with Rehgar, actually I need to point this out too. Boy, much like Suppression Pulse is only good if the enemy team has got some basic attackers. That means the blind is actually worthwhile. Bloodlust is only good if your team is basic attackers, and Bloodlust is worthwhile. Otherwise, Ancestral is pretty good. I think Ancestral is going to be used more often these days, and Rehgar is still very good with that. You know, he brings a good single target burst healing. The totem's powerful. He does good damage and, you know, good wave clear and stuff like that. Yeah, there you go. I mean, that are the tier 1 supports. Tier 2 supports. Bit of a change here is Morales. Now, Morales, Tyrande, Oriel, and Brightwing. So, Morales, for me, has moved up a lot in the tier list. She's not a hero you pick every game, but if you're going up against a team that does not have dive, Morales, this is the thing I was talking about with utility versus raw healing numbers. Lieutenant Morales in nearly every game will have the biggest raw healing numbers of any support in the game. It's incredibly strong. It's incredibly strong. She does so much goddamn healing. On Brax's holdout, that's, you know, where she's probably most well known now. You know, you put her with the 4-man team, there's no ganks from the other lane. It's, you know, it just doesn't work because they give up control up top, and it's very telegraphed when they do. So it's basically 4-man versus 4-man hitting each other in the face. There's no flanks to worry about, so Morales is completely safe. And then the raw healing she does is so oppressive and difficult to work around. Yeah, I think that in the right drafts nowadays, which does happen quite a bit more, it's much more relevant to the meta now. Morales is actually very, very strong, especially on 2-lane maps. Not Haunted Mines, because you can get flanked in the mines, but the other ones. But yeah, if they don't have dive, if they don't have good flankers, Morales is super duper strong. So I've definitely moved her up. She's, you know, not a hero you pick every game, but when you do pick her, she can be really good. All these other heroes they're decent. They bring their own thing. Tyrande obviously brings a great team fight with Starfall, decent healing, some vision, stuns, kill pressure with the mark, stuff like that. Oriel, again, combined with like a Gul'dan or something, she's a super duper healer. She's really strong. She does a lot of healing. Doesn't have cleanse, which is a little bit of a problem, but not a huge one. And, you know, we're having more and more supports without cleanse as well. But yeah, I think she's very good. Brightwing brings a global. She's good against melee assassins, but we're not seeing as many of those at the moment, but she's definitely a solid option. Then finally, we've got tier 3 right here. We've got Uther and Lily. I think these are significantly weaker than the other healers in the game. They simply do less healing, really. They do less healing. You know, like Uther has burst healing, but Divine Shield is just not super relevant right now, unfortunately. Just not super relevant right now. And then with Lily, again, she's pretty good as a second support against melee assassins. I actually think she's very good in that niche. But her healing is much too slow as a solo support. yeah, like the blinds and stuff are only really good against melee assassins. Like, don't do the bronze mistake of picking Lily against a Rainer. You're not gonna blind the Rainer. Just don't do it. He's too far away. You can't target him. He's too far away. Anyway, yeah, Lily and Uther are really bad. And if you're looking at high level play, most of the time you're never going to be picking them. Except, I might even move Lily above Uther. I don't know. It doesn't really matter. But like Lily is the second support against melee assassins. It's pretty good. Aside from that, though, no. And even still, she's not the greatest, perhaps. Melee assassins, then, coming up next. Melee assassins are pretty interesting. Tier S, no surprise, really. Ragnaros is still number 1. He's just insane. He'd probably be my first ban if you're not picking him first. In most games, he is super strong on most maps. He has great teamfight, great laning, great map pressure. He's great with objectives. He just does so many things so well. Yeah, Ragnaros is great. Pick potential, Sophia Smash. He's fantastic. What a great hero. Then we've got Zeratul. Zeratul is, yeah, he's so strong. Just great assassination potential. VP is immensely powerful in controlling team fights. His ganks are great. Zeratul is just really good at the moment. He's very difficult to play, though. That's one thing to note. That's one thing I note with most of the assassins, is that with assassins, right, this is something to bear in mind, and with the tier list, I've actually moved away a lot from considering the win rates overly much with assassins, because the big thing with them is there's a big skill requirement for them, and knowing what compositions assassins work in and what heroes they counterpick, very important. And then, the mechanical skill required. With warriors and supports, it's a little bit more straightforward, I feel, into what compositions they work with and what they counter, because there's fewer warriors and there's fewer supports. And so they tend to be a bit more stable. You tend to see them more the same things, the same games, over and over again. So I think it's a bit, the game knowledge required for warrior and support drafting is a bit simpler. With assassins, it's more complicated, and then you've got the mechanical requirements of assassins on top of that, which I think are higher as well. Whereas, let's say warriors and supports in comparison, you've got a bit more. Well, let's say warriors in comparison, you've got a lot more. I feel like tactical complexity in terms of engaging, controlling the fight, and peeling for your team, all that sort of stuff is quite complex. But assassins bring the complexity in terms of their mechanics, oftentimes. But anyway, Zeratul's very hard. That's just worth pointing out. Tier 1 then. Valeera is probably the big thing here. We've got Kerrigan, which is not really a surprise. Valeera and Samuro. I would also say most of the melee assassins are very niche, and it is incredibly important that they fit well in the draft and with the map and everything like that. Samuro, he's great on maps. He's basically kind of like the Lost Vikings in a way, is how I like to think of him. He's very much, in my mind, a specialist, right? Split pushing, taking merc camps, creating just immense map pressure, then transitioning later in the game into more team fighting. Yeah, you can check out my Samuro videos if you want to see a bit of how I play Samuro. But yeah, he's great at doing like soloing the objectives, soloing merc camps, solo pressure down lanes. He's very safe with his stealth and everything. Yeah, he can be really good at that. Kerrigan, of course, she brings kill pressure. She's great in Infernal Shrines with hopscotch. Yeah, I think Kerrigan is very good. Bear in mind with Kerrigan, she doesn't fit as well in the double warrior meta. So that's something to bear in mind when you're drafting her. If they've got a very tanky team, Kerrigan loses a lot of value. She's going to be better against squishier teams where you've got like blow up and you can actually pick someone off. So that's worth considering. I then got Valeera. I have put Valeera in tier 1. Valeera has received buffs for the most part. They kind of buffed her and then they nerfed Cheap Shot a little bit, which in my opinion was a very good change overall. Cheap Shot was a little bit obnoxious, but ultimately she's still a hero with very good burst damage. She's very disruptive. She's actually surprisingly survivable as well with Smoke Bomb and then her very high health pool. But fundamentally, she is a hero with a 1.25 second stun on an 8-second cooldown. Point and click stun. That's a really big deal. Just look at Varian. Just look at how they had to change Warbringer. And look at Varian's tier S warrior right now. Why? Because he's got a point and click stun on a very short cooldown. That's what Valeera has. So they did nerf it a little bit in the patch. They knocked 0.25 seconds off it, which actually does matter. Does matter. I think it's a good change though, because it was too much before. But yeah, I think she is very strong. I'll have some Valeera gameplay coming up in the next day or two for you guys. I've already recorded it. She's very difficult to play, but I think she's going to be quite impactful on maps that are more focused on ganking and getting kills. I think she's going to be very good on those maps with flanking. She's not as good in straight up team fights, but in smaller skirmishes and ganking things. So, for example, Dragonshire would stand out to me as being like, okay, boom, this is a Valeera map right here. She's going to be super strong on that one. But yeah, I think Valeera is going to be really good. We'll have to see what the pro players make happen with her, everything going forwards. Will she be more of a pub stompy type hero? Potentially. But yeah, I think in Hero League she's going to be pretty big. She's going to be a pretty big deal. She's actually not bad at all. She's not bad at all. Tier 2 then, we have Illidan, Thrall, Greymane, and Alarak. Somewhat interchangeable on this tier as well. Thrall is probably the one that stands out here because he was tier S recently. The changes to his heroics have just simply hurt him an awful lot. The Sundering is probably the best it's ever been, actually. I think the shorter cooldown is actually a pretty good trade for the shorter duration on the stun, because the displacement is the main thing, the isolation, the pick potential. But ultimately, that just doesn't fit very well in the current meta with the sort of tanky front lines that we're seeing here. So the Sundering is not particularly good right now. Earthquake got nerfed an awful lot. Yeah, I just don't think Thrall's that strong. I mean, he's competing against a lot of better heroes for his spot. You know, he's competing against Zeratul. He's competing against Ragnaros. He's competing against Dehaka and Sonya. There's just so many heroes that take that sort of, can take a sort of solo laning spot, a sort of damage dealing melee hero that are just better than Thrall right now. Illidan, he's okay. He can definitely synergize pretty well with Tassadar. You know, he's a niche hero, but in his particular niche, he's fairly decent as a good sort of divey anti-melee. Actually. While I'm talking about this is a good point. I think Lucio is going to be fairly vulnerable. If you're worried about how to counter Lucio on this patch, right? He's quite vulnerable to divey heroes. So like Chen, Illidan, Tracer, like classic 3. Because, hey look, you know, what's the use of speed boosting on the enemy team if they're just looking to dive you anyway? So he struggles against those heroes. What's the use of a little knockback if they just jump right back on top of you? And then, you know, what's the use of like this big shield that expires over a few seconds if they're somewhat, you know, slower damage dealing heroes, but that are super, super sticky. You know, I think like the Chen, Illidan, Tracer, they symbolize like the kind of hero, or they are the kind of heroes that are going to do well against Lucio, right? They can like out damage his healing. They can stick on him. It's very hard for him to get away or to get his team away. They just put immense pressure on. Yeah, I think they just work really well. That's worth noting. But yeah, Illidan's pretty good. Greymane, I've actually come to like Greymane a little bit more. Greymane's kind of nice. He's not as good as a lot of the other damage dealers you would be picking up, but I mean, he can work very well if you got a Tyrael. He's okay. He's an okay hero. He does a lot of damage if you can get on top of people. There's a place for him, but you're going to rarely pick him. Then we've got Alarak, sort of similar thing here. Alarak is also, he's pretty good, but you're just going up against a lot of heroes. Much the same thing I described with Thrall. You're going up, you know, against better hero choices. That's one of the big problems for Alarak. There's just better choices right now in the same sort of spot that he's in. Then tier 3 over here, we've got the Butcher and we've got Varian. The big issue with Varian is that why would you ever pick Assassin Varian when you can have Tank Varian? That's the main issue. Tank Varian is so good. Why would you ever pick Assassin Varian over Tank Varian? The Twin Blades, in my opinion, has sucked and always sucked. If you want Twin Blades Varian, just pick an Illidan. Pick something else. Colossus Smash. Why pick Colossus Smash when you can pick Taunt Varian? They do pretty much the same sort of thing, except Taunt Varian has got 60% more base HP. He's incredibly tanky, whereas Colossus Smash Varian has, I think, minus 10% still. So he's squishier. The vulnerability is nice, but Taunt is, they're fairly equal. It's just, yeah, that's the problem with Varian, is the tank one is just by far the best. And then you've got the Butcher. Might actually see more of the Butcher. And possibly Greymane as well, right? Maybe even Thrall. Again, just look at these heroes and think of, alright, melee assassins. What melee assassins are going to do better with a bit of move speed? Hey, Ragnaros as well. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. But yeah, what heroes are going to do better with some move speed? That could definitely be a thing for the Butcher. You know, as the big shield that Lucio gives him, move speed Lucio gives him, that could help him out a lot. But generally speaking, he's obviously not a great choice. He's quite gimmicky. He's quite easy to lock down and to kill and to counter pick, so he's a bit of a problem. I think, you know, sometimes you do get a draft where the Butcher works really well and can just like win the game because he does so much damage. but generally no. Generally no. All right, ranged assassins now. Again, much like the melee assassins, for me, with ranged assassins, I'm very much like diverging in quite a few cases from the win percentages and stuff like that, because as a ranged assassin, I play ranged assassins probably most myself. That's probably my most played sort of role and area. There's such a huge skill, like, this level involved in playing them. I think there's a lot of really good ranged, like we'll see Li Ming, for example. I think Li Ming is really good. The problem with Li Ming, I mean, and you see her, she's used all the time in pro play. She's a really good hero. She's got a terrible win rate because the skill demands are quite high, and that's just a definitive thing with assassins for me in general. Anyway, tier S, we have Vala, Tychus, and Gul'dan. I feel like in range assassins especially, this is the one where the tiers are the closest together. Like, tier S and range assassins is not that far above the others by any means at all. But yeah, Vala, Tychus, Gul'dan are the fairly common ones. You know, they all bring good wave clear. Vala synergizes really nicely with Tassadar. That's a really good combo. It just, all three heroes do an awful lot of damage from range. They're good, they're consistent. Tychus, very good against, warriors, and the Odin is a great team fighting heroic as well. Gul'dan just does this big consistent AoE damage too. He's great on maps like Braxis as well with all the wave clear. Yeah, I think these three range assassins are the ones that are going to be fought over the most. Then we got tier 1, we've got Jaina, Li Ming, Falstad, and Zul'jin. So yeah, I mean, like, Li Ming and Falstad, they're played all the time in pro play. I think they're awesome heroes. They've got terrible win rates in Hero League because you need a lot of skill to play these heroes. I think there's really very little appreciation for the amount of skill that's actually required in the heroes that actually goes into them. And for that reason, you've got a lot of people unknowingly playing them suboptimally, which is bringing the win percentages down a lot. But don't let that dissuade you. They're actually really strong. They're actually really strong. So Jaina, she brings, a lot of blow up. You got the Ring of Frost combo with Zeratul potential. She's got good wave clear, good AoE damage, and burst damage. Yeah, Jaina's pretty nice. Li Ming, resets is huge. She does tons of damage, tons of long range poke. She's very safe as well. I'm a huge fan of Li Ming. She's probably my favorite hero at the moment. Falstad got global presence, great wave clear, less teamfight damage than most other assassins, but he brings some control down with Mighty Gust. And then we got Zul'jin, who does a metric ton of damage, but is quite vulnerable to being focused and killed. He's kind of like the hyper carry type hero. So with the right supporting heroes, he can be quite strong. He works very well with Morales. He works very well with Tassadar. I think he'll work very well with Lucio. Yeah, I think there is a place for Zul'jin, but he can be difficult to draft because he is ultimately an incredibly immobile, high damage output hero that thrives at low health. There's problems inherent in that. He's kind of like a ranged butcher in some ways. He's kind of like a ranged butcher. Because he's ranged, that's like the big defining thing that makes him good and makes the butcher bad. But yeah, there you go. That's Zul'jin. Tier number 2 then. We got Kel'Thuz, Nova, Lunara, Tracer, and Chromie. I think they're all great heroes in their own right. And the different maps, the different niches. I think, Nova is very underrated. She's much better than people think she is in sort of the Hero League format. Yeah, she's like one of those hated heroes that's actually not terrible. That's actually not terrible in terms of the ganks and the roams and stuff. Much like Valeera. She's quite like Valeera in that sense. That's Nova. Lunara obviously does tons of sustained damage. Kel'Thuz brings good AoE damage. Tracer, she's got like good dive potential, good pick potential. She's difficult to play. I often like to see her with a Tassadar, honestly, because Tassadar makes her easier to play, and that's pretty important. And then you've got Chromie as well, who's good on certain maps for just assassinating and long range. Again, the thing with assassins is they're very much focused on their niche, right? You just know, all you got to do for the most part is know what they counter well and what they get countered by. And once you start knowing that stuff, you can start to piece together a pretty good team. And the tiers are probably least important when it comes to the assassins, range assassins particularly, because you got such a variety and it's all about the niches that they fit and they fulfill. We've got Raynor and Gall in tier 3. Gall much the same as Cho, not very good at the moment, unfortunately. And then Raynor, I feel, is a bit weaker compared to all the other options. Sometimes Raynor will be a good choice to pick up. I mean, he does scale very nicely into the late game with Executioner, with Giant Killer, and with Nexus Frenzy. He's really good at like melting single targets late game. But and like Warriors late game in particular, and then Hyperion is pretty nice. But he is like a slow hero. His early game is terrible. He's got no wave clear. The bug was actually a really large part of why he was doing so well. The Hyperion bug and the Season Marksman bug and all the bugs. He's okay. But yeah, there you go. That's the ranged assassins overall. Mostly be focused on these 7 or so, and then you'll see dabbles of these ones, and so on and so forth. Speaking of ranged as well, let's hop over real quick to the specialists. We got some crazy stuff happening there, and straight into tier S for the specialists. Here we got Nazebo. Nazebo is super, super strong right now, as this really hyper scaling hero who does tons of damage into the late game. He's very tanky as well. Nazebo is going to be kind of the other side of the range damage dealers. He's definitely one to watch, and one that is underrated as well. But yeah, he scales really well. Like his late game scaling is just insanely strong. He does so much damage in the late game, and he becomes so tanky. He just gets better and better as the game goes on. That's Nazebo. In tier 1, I have Sergeant Hammer, Lost Vikings, Zool, and Sylvanas. No big surprises here, really. I mean, they're all good, solid heroes overall. I think Sergeant Hammer, again, that's the thing. Specialists are very much the forgotten sort of grouping, I find. And they haven't been that strong recently, so that's part of that. But yeah, Sergeant Hammer, she became one of the most popular heroes in the game for a while. Then she just fell off. I think she's still very solid, a good damage dealer, good range damage dealer. She does some interesting, unique things. I mean, let's put it like this way. In pro games in Korea, she's still one of the most contested range damage dealers. That says a lot. The Lost Vikings, they obviously do their thing on like Garden of Terror in particular. Maybe a couple of other maps. But yeah, it's just having multiple bodies on the field. Really good in Garden of Terror in particular. Zool can double soak. His team fighting's not great, but he's got great double soaking, great like early game pressure. He's very much an early game hero. And Sylvanas, she's great with the pushing objectives. Wailing Arrow is very powerful, and she does some pretty decent damage as well. Hopping into tier 2, and this is where our friend Murky is. Again, like Lucio, I'm not super sure where Murky will fit in. And I feel like Murky will be better in lower leagues than in the higher leagues. One of the big problems is that in the higher leagues, people will like focus down the puffer fish, and Murky loses a lot of value. He can really be bullied a lot in the lane. So at higher levels of play, Murky will be map dependent and he'll be team comp dependent. But he will be pretty strong in the right circumstances. I think he is actually fairly decent now. It's overall a buff. I'm still kind of get a feel for him because, you know, the build I was using on the PTR got categorically nerfed, which feels really bad. Multiple talents nerfed, so that kind of threw me off a little bit. But yeah, I think Murky's a pretty good choice. He's a pretty solid choice, and there's nothing wrong with playing Murky right now. He could end up being very, very powerful for a while. I expect in the long term that Murky will fall off as people get more comfortable with knowing how to counter him now that he's actually seeing play. But he will probably always be a decent pick. Garden of Terror is a really good map to run Murky on if you want to run him on that one. There's a lot of like split pushing. He can steal the enemy small seed camps, and if he dies, it's not a big deal. And then, you know, he can use the Terror really aggressively, and again, if he dies, it's not a big deal. So that's pretty cool. But yeah, Murky. Yeah, I'll try to get you guys a video of Murky pretty soon. He's a pretty wacky hero. We got Zagara and Medivh. So Zagara, she brings good laning pressure, good pushing pressure, some good damage. Overall, I think, probably Dragonshire is where she shines the most, because with Nidus Network, you can like just control you. It's like a global with no cooldown in a sense, which is really important on that map, or sort of anywhere like that. Which she's a pretty cool hero. She's definitely underrated and probably needs to see a bit more play than she actually does. Then we got Medivh. He's great at countering burst comps. Very high skill cap hero again, but you can do some really cool things with him. I'm a big fan of Medivh actually. Terrible win rate, but in my opinion, a really good hero. I have a video up on Medivh very recently if you want to see that. Then Azmodan, Abathur, and Gaslo to round it out. Gaslo, worst hero in the game right now, in my opinion. Sorry guys, I know we've got some Gaslo fans here, but a high level play, I think he is categorically the worst hero in the game. Abathur and Azmodan, I'd probably almost create a tier 4 just for Gaslo here. But Abathur and Azmodan they're fairly decent. They do their own thing. One thing to note, I think Abathur and Lucio have like a horrific win rate together, because it's like less heroes for Lucio to give his auras to, and Yeah, then like very weak wave clear and stuff like that. So be careful of that. I remember when I was investigating Lucio, I saw that they've like a 10% win ratio when put together. It's just like, oh god, don't do it, don't do it. Anyway, Asmodan can be very good on bigger maps. He brings obviously good map pressure across multiple lanes. I quite like the hero actually. I think he's pretty funky. Then Abathur can be good in certain compositions as well. Um, Not super relevant right now, but he got a little bit of a buff in the PTR, which will help him out a little bit. But there you go, guys. That is the tier list. Let's go over them just at the end so you can get a bit of a refresher in Warriors. I think the big things for Warriors are Artanis, much less relevant in this patch than he was before. He's just the meta has changed. He got some small nerfs. The meta has changed. Artanis has really fallen off. Ultimately, you're picking Artanis. You're giving up a bruiser slot that could be spent on a really good solo laning hero. And yeah, that's the problem. Is like you're picking Artanis in the spot of like a Ragnaros or a Dahaka or a Sonya, something like that, and that's the big problem for him. Other things to note: Varian. Varian tier S in my opinion. Tank Varian is insanely strong. Point and click lockdown is insanely strong. He's super tanky. Tank Varian is really one to watch. And then Sonya, of course, coming very much back into the meta with the huge buffs to Whirlwind. But she's very much the spin to win Sonya is what you're looking for. So you're looking to build tanky and to build Whirlwind. And that's kind of what she does. Just get into the enemy team and be Whirlwinding, tanking up a lot of damage, healing up and dealing a lot of damage. Being good at solo laning and great at doing objectives and mercs and stuff like that. Moving over to the support heroes, Malf is, I think, still the best overall support in the game. Then we've got, these four, I think will be very much contested and form kind of the basis for the supports in this patch. I think Lucio looks like he's going to be really good. He's very easy to get an initial hold of. I think he'd be very complex then, pushing into higher levels of play. But yeah, Lucio seems like he's going to be very strong and will enable a bunch of different playstyles because he gives movement speed. Lucio in Overwatch has been disgustingly OP and they can't seem to make... I'm not sure right now, but I know for like the longest time at least, Lucio was disgustingly overpowered just because of what his kit does. I could see that being the same thing in Heroes of the Storm. It'll be really interesting to see what the pro teams do with him whenever he arrives on the HGC servers. Then, Rehgar and Karazim, both these sort of aggressive supports, really like that, big fan of that. And then Tassadar brings shielding a lot of damage with Archon, and the shielding enables then a lot of heroes as well, particularly Vala. Tassadar Vala is such a strong combo still. Then the other big thing to note, I think, with supports would be Morales coming very much back into the meta. The meta suits her a lot right now. She does a ton of healing, so yeah, if you're in a composition where it's safe, Morales can be really, really strong, and she's very much underrated. But yeah, there you go. Melee Assassins then. A pretty interesting group of heroes overall. Probably not in the best spot that they've ever been in. But, well, we've got Ragnaros, who is still probably the best hero to, like, first pick. The ultimate first pick, first ban hero, even still, I think, for a while. We got Zeratul, very difficult to play, but incredibly impactful. I think they're the best. Valera, I think, is actually pretty solid with the changes to her. And I think there's definitely going to be a place for Valera in Hero League, for sure. Thrall has fallen off a lot. That's probably the other thing to note, is with the changes to his heroics, Thrall is much less impactful than he has been in the recent patches. So there you go. Melee Assassins. Ranged Assassins is up next. Here we are. Ranged Assassins. Got a lot of flexibility, I feel like, with Ranged Assassins. They're kind of like Warriors, where like nearly all of them are actually very good and can be picked in a lot of circumstances. But very much be considering about what you're trying to counterpick and so on and so forth. And then also the skill requirements of them. So the win rates can sometimes be fairly misleading when you consider the needs of the draft and then the needs of the mechanical skill of the hero. You can have really good heroes like Falstad and Li Ming with bad win rates. It's one of those things. And it makes it difficult to make a tier list. It makes it difficult because it's like, who's the target audience? Difficult thing. Anyway, Bala, Tychus, Gul'dan, probably the best overall. I think in tier 1, Falstad, Li Ming, Jaina, Zul'jin, also very good overall. Though, again, do bear in mind, Gul'dan, Falstad, Li Ming especially seem to suffer from a lack of... They're quite demanding in terms of skill. Anyway, then we've got tier 2 heroes. A bit more focus on the maps and on the counter picking, I think. These heroes are fairly broadly applicable. Like, Vala, Tychus, Gul'dan, Falstad, Li Ming, Jaina. They're really good on nearly all the maps. That's actually something to note, and that's actually a big part of why they're higher up on the tier list. Is that they just fit really well on most maps and in most competitions. We get a bit more niche with the other heroes right here. And yeah, there you go. Ranged assassins. I think, you know, you've got a lot of flexibility with ranged assassins, to be honest with you. A lot of flexibility. Then in specialist, Nazeebo is the standout one here. He's such a good range damage dealer who scales just incredibly well. Does a ton of late game damage and is super tanky. Got the tier 1 specialists. They're all solid enough heroes. Tier 2 is where we get a little bit more wacky and a bit crazy, and Tier 3 is pretty wacky and crazy as well, which I'm murky. I'm not super sure where he's going to be. I'll put him at top of Tier 2 right now. I think he's going to be very, very strong in the lower leagues. I think he's still going to be strong in higher leagues as well. We'll see exactly how it works out, so stay tuned in the future. I'll try to get a murky video up when I've got even, maybe in a few days, when I've got like a better feel for the hero. But yeah, he's a strange one. I think he's a good solid pick, and you're not going to go wrong if you want to pick Murky in Hero League. You're not going to go wrong. You know, you're not going to be playing a weak hero by any means. I think he's going to be quite good. So yeah, feel free to pick Murky. I think he's good. He's a solid hero, and he also scales very nicely into late game, of course, as well. And apart from that, I think things are looking good. Guys, that is the tier list. I hope you enjoyed. Give it a thumbs up if you did. And yeah, probably the next big one I do will be the Season 4 tier list, which I'm very excited about. I hope to see you guys all then. As like I said, stay tuned on the channel. A lot of these heroes that have changed in the patch, or that the meta is favoring a bit more, I either had videos on them recently, like I've had videos on Nazeebo, Medivh pretty recently, and I'm going to have like Morales, a video on her, video on Lucio later today as well, Morales the next day or two, Valeera the next day or two. I'll try to get maybe Sonya, maybe Murky video, that sort of stuff. Let me know below as well what kind of videos you'd like to see on which heroes. But yeah, I'll try to keep you guys abreast throughout the Road to Grandmaster series, in particular, of the heroes that are strong right now in Hero League. So yeah, hope you guys stick around and see that sort of stuff, and I will see you very, very soon. Thanks for watching. Bye bye.